Turn the car around, Michael, now! My voice was so loud that my husband almost crashed into another vehicle on the highway. My hands were shaking as I held the black bag my son had asked me to carry. Inside, hidden amongst innocent clothes, was something that would change our family forever. For 15 years, I helped my son financially. I sacrificed my savings, and I loaned him money he never paid back. But I never imagined he would be capable of this. But before I continue, make sure you've already subscribed to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching this video from. We love to know how far our stories are reaching. My name is Margaret. I'm 67 years old, and I always believed that my greatest purpose in life was to help my family. My husband Michael and I worked our whole lives to save up for a comfortable retirement. Our only son, David, now 42, had lost his job 6 years ago, and since then, we had been living in an endless cycle of loans that deep down I knew would never be repaid. It all started with small requests. "Mum, can you help me with rent this month? I promise I'll pay you back when I get paid." Soon came the water and electricity bills, my grandson Peter's school supplies, and payments for a new car they couldn't afford to buy. Before I knew it, I was supporting their entire family. David's wife, Rachel, always treated me with a cold politeness. She never showed genuine gratitude for the sacrifices we made. I saw the way she would roll her eyes when I mentioned we needed to be more careful with our money, as if it were my obligation to keep funding their lifestyle. 2 months ago, when they asked me for $25,000 to enroll Peter in a private school because he was being bullied at the public one, I finally put my foot down. "I can't do it anymore, son. Our retirement money is running out. We'll find another public school, and we can talk to the principal about the bullying." The look David gave me in that moment was as if I had betrayed him, as if saying no after years of saying yes was an unforgivable crime. In the following weeks, their behavior changed drastically. They stopped letting me see Peter on weekends. Whenever I called, they always had excuses. "He's sleeping. We're going out now. He has a lot of homework." Each refusal was like a knife to my heart. Then, 3 days ago, came the surprise. David called, sounding more cheerful than he had in months. "Mum, we're thinking of taking a trip to Palm Springs this weekend. A friend lent us their vacation house. We thought it would be great for everyone to go, so Peter could spend some time with his grandparents. What do you think?" My heart leaped with joy. Finally, a chance to see my grandson, to fix things. "Of course, son. We'd love to go." "Great. Oh, and Mum, could you bring an extra bag for us? Our car is already full with Peter's things." "No problem," I replied without a second thought. On the morning of the trip, David and Rachel showed up with a simple black bag. Nothing suspicious about it. We put it in our car and agreed that they would follow right behind us on Interstate 101 towards Palm Springs. We had been on the road for almost 2 hours when my phone rang. It was David. "Mum, the bag we gave you, you didn't open it, did you?" The question sent an instant shiver down my spine. There was something strange in his tone. "No. Why would I open it?" "No reason. It's just, I love you, Mum. You know that, right?" In 40 years, my son had said those words maybe a half-dozen times. And never like this, like a goodbye. "David, what's going on?" "Nothing, Mum. Just keep driving. We'll see you at the toll plaza." I hung up the phone with trembling hands. Something was terribly wrong. "Michael, pull over." "What? We're on the highway, Margaret." "Pull over now," I yelled. My husband pulled over to the shoulder. David and Rachel drove past us, honking their horn. I asked Michael to turn on the hazard lights as if we had a car problem. My heart pounding, I opened the black bag. I moved aside a few t-shirts, a child's pajama set, a Spider-Man pencil case that I recognized as a birthday gift I had given Peter. And then, at the bottom, I found packages wrapped in black plastic. My blood ran cold. Even at my age, I knew exactly what they were. They were illicit substances, a lot of them. "Oh my God, Michael," I whispered, showing my husband. They were using us as mules. David and Rachel had planned to use their own parents as drug couriers, knowing that an elderly couple would probably not be searched as thoroughly at police checkpoints on the highway. The destination was never a vacation house in Palm Springs. We were going somewhere to deliver the goods. "Turn the car around now, Michael, now!" I yelled, feeling a mix of panic and rage I had never experienced. My husband looked at me with wide eyes, but he didn't question it. He made a U-turn at the first opportunity. And in the rear-view mirror, I saw David's car stop and start turning back too. "What are we going to do?" Michael asked, his voice trembling as much as his hands on the steering wheel. "Call the police," I replied, a knot in my throat. "Our own son was willing to send us to jail, Michael. We have no choice." The moment Michael dialed 911, I felt as if I were betraying my own flesh and blood. But what choice did we have? If we were caught with that amount, we would spend our last years in a prison cell. "Emergency? What's your situation?" a woman's voice asked. Michael looked at me, his face as pale as a sheet. "I need to report an incident. Our son put illicit substances in our bag without our knowledge. We are on Interstate 101, at mile marker 107, heading towards the capital." As my husband spoke, I saw David's car approaching fast in the rear-view mirror. My heart pounded. "Michael, they're right behind us." "Ma'am, you need to stay calm," the voice on the other end said. "A patrol unit is already being dispatched to your location. Do not confront the suspects. Keep driving normally if you can." David's car pulled alongside ours, and he was frantically gesturing for us to pull over. Rachel was in the passenger seat, her face twisted in an expression I had never seen before. Fear mixed with rage. "Keep driving," I whispered to Michael. "Don't stop." My husband sped up, but our old car was no match for David's newer vehicle. He got in front of us and braked sharply, forcing Michael to stop to avoid a collision. "Oh my God, what do we do now?" Michael looked desperate, still holding the phone. "Lock your doors," the police instructed. "Do not get out of the vehicle." David got out of his car and ran to our window. His face was red, his eyes wild. He pounded on the glass. "Mom, what are you doing? Why did you turn around?" I squeezed Michael's hand, looking for strength. "Don't open it," I begged him. David kept pounding. "Mom, open this door. What happened?" I looked into the eyes of my only son, the boy I had rocked through feverish nights, who cried in my lap after his first rejection, who gave me my only grandson. Now, at 42, he was willing to sacrifice his own parents to solve his financial problems. "We know what's in the bag, David," I said, loud enough for him to hear through the glass. "We called the police." His face transformed. The rage gave way to shock, then to panic. "You what? Are you crazy? This is going to destroy our lives." "You were going to destroy ours, son," I replied, tears streaming down my face. "Why would you do this?" "We owe money to some dangerous people, Mum. It was the only way out. They were going to hurt Peter." Rachel appeared beside him, grabbing his arm. "Let's go, David. Now." David looked at me one last time, a mix of fear and betrayal in his eyes. "You ruined everything, Mum." They ran back to their car and sped off, leaving tire marks on the pavement. "They're fleeing," Michael told the police. "Patrol cars are on their way. What is the vehicle description and license plate?" We gave them the information, feeling like every word was a stab to our own son. 15 minutes later, which felt like an eternity, 2 police cruisers pulled up next to us. We showed them the bag. We told them the whole story. I cried uncontrollably as I explained how we had supported our son and his family for years, how we had recently set a boundary, and how he had planned this reconciliation just to use us as drug couriers. "Mum, what you did today was very brave," a senior officer said, his gaze compassionate. "Unfortunately, we see many cases where criminals use the elderly and family members as mules, precisely because they are rarely pulled over at checkpoints. You probably saved your own lives today." I sat on the shoulder, holding Michael's hand as they took the bag and took our statement. A female officer came over with a glass of water. "What about my grandson?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Peter is only 10. He was in the car with them. We are searching for the vehicle now. If the boy is with them when they are located, Child Protective Services will be activated to ensure his safety." Sitting there, in the middle of nowhere, between the open sky and the hot asphalt, I thought about all the times I had given in to David's requests, all the times I had given up my own needs to meet his, all the times I had ignored the signs that something was wrong because I wanted to believe my son was still the person I raised him to be. "We're going to take you back home," the officer said. "You need to be available in case we have more questions." On the way back, I was completely silent, looking out the window at the landscapes that just hours before had seemed so promising. Michael held my hand, his thumb making small circles on my skin, just as he always did when I was distressed. "Did I do the right thing?" I finally asked, my voice cracking. "What if they hurt Peter? What if—" "Margaret," Michael interrupted, his voice firm despite his teary eyes. "They put drugs in our bag. They were willing to let us get locked up. That's not love. That's not family. You did the only thing you could do." But that night, alone in the bed I had shared with Michael for 45 years, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining where Peter was, if he was scared, if he would understand why his grandmother had betrayed his parents. The phone rang at 3:17 in the morning. I answered before the second ring. "Mrs. Margaret?" It was the officer's voice. "We found your son and his wife trying to cross the state line. They are in custody." "What about my grandson?" I asked, my heart nearly pounding out of my chest. "The boy is fine. He is with a social worker now. As next of kin, you have first preference for temporary custody, if you wish." I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Michael and I sat on our little back porch, watching the stars disappear as the day dawned. We didn't need to talk much. After 45 years together, our silences said more than words. "We're going to get Peter," I finally said, as the sun coloured the horizon. "Are you sure, Margaret? Are we too old to take care of a 10-year-old boy?" I looked at my husband, at his calloused hands from a lifetime of work, at his eyes that now showed the weight of an unthinkable betrayal. What choice do we have? He's our grandson. I can't let him go to a group home or a foster family. Not after all this. Michael nodded slowly. "You've always had a heart bigger than the world." At 8 in the morning, we were at Child Protective Services. The counsellor, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, greeted us in her small, stuffy office. "Peter is physically okay, but he's very scared and confused," she explained. "He doesn't understand why his parents were taken by the police or why he can't go home." "What did you tell him?" I asked. "Just that there was a problem, and that we needed to find a safe place for him to stay for now. We think it's best if you explain it to him in a way you feel is appropriate." When Peter walked into the room, my heart sank. He looked so small, so vulnerable in his wrinkled Batman t-shirt and messy hair. His eyes, so much like his father's, were red and swollen. "Grandma," his voice was just a whisper. "Where are my dad and mum?" I opened my arms and he ran into them, burying his face in my chest as he used to when he was little. I felt his tears soaking my blouse. "We're going home, sweetie," I said softly, stroking his hair. "We'll go home and we can talk there, okay?" On the way to our house, Peter was quiet in the back seat, clutching the school backpack the social worker had picked up from his house. Occasionally, our eyes would meet in the rearview mirror, and I would try to smile reassuringly. At home, I made hot chocolate. It was always our family's comfort drink, and the three of us sat at the kitchen table. "Peter," I began, choosing my words carefully. "Your parents did something wrong, something against the law, and that's why they'll have to be away for a while." His eyes widened. "Are they bad guys?" The innocent, direct question hit me like a punch. How do you explain to a child that his parents aren't monsters, but desperate people who made terrible choices? "No, sweetie. They're people who made a mistake. Good people sometimes do bad things when they're scared or desperate. It was because of money, right?" Peter asked, surprising me with his perceptiveness. "They fought a lot about money. My mum always said if you helped more, we wouldn't be in this situation." I felt like I'd been slapped. Is that how Rachel portrayed me to her own son, as a greedy grandmother who refused to help enough? "Peter, Grandma and Grandpa helped your parents for many years," Michael explained, his voice gentle but firm. "We gave them a lot of money, more than we could afford, in fact. But sometimes, no matter how much you give, it's never enough if the person doesn't know how to manage it." Peter swirled his spoon in his chocolate, creating little eddies. "I know. I heard them arguing sometimes. Dad said it was just another loan, and Mum said you owed it to them for him being your only son." Every word from Peter was a painful revelation of how we were viewed by my son's family. Not as generous people who sacrificed their own financial security, but as a bank that never closed, a resource to be exploited. "Peter, do you know how long you'll have to stay here?" he asked, changing the subject. "The lady from Child Protective Services said it might be a long time, that it depends on the judge." He looked up, suddenly alarmed. "Are you going to send me away too?" "Never," I replied firmly, reaching out to hold his hand. "This is your home now, for as long as you need." In the following days, we established a new routine. We enrolled Peter in the public school near our house, the same one where Michael had been a janitor before he retired. We bought him new school supplies, some clothes, and tried to create an atmosphere of normalcy in the middle of the chaos our lives had become. 1 week after David and Rachel's arrest, we had a visit from a lawyer. "They want to see you, sir," he said, sitting in our living room. "They're in pre-trial detention while the case goes to court." "And what do they have to say?" Michael asked, his voice harder than I had ever heard it. "They claim they were forced by drug traffickers, that they were being threatened and saw no alternative. They're asking you to pay for their defense." I let out a bitter laugh that I didn't recognize as my own. After everything they did, after trying to turn us into criminals, they still think they can ask us for money. The lawyer looked uncomfortable. "They also mentioned that if you don't help, they could claim that you knew about the drugs, that it was a joint plan." Michael got up so fast the chair almost fell over. "Get out of our house now," he ordered, pointing to the door. "And tell my son that if he dares to accuse us, I'll testify against him myself. Tell him that we have the recordings of the calls to the police, that we have witnesses that we discovered the drugs and immediately asked for help. Tell him we're not the idiots he thought we were." After the lawyer left, Michael sat heavily on the couch, covering his face with his hands. It was one of the few times I had seen him cry in all our years together. "Michael," I whispered, sitting down next to him. Do you think we did something wrong in raising him? How did our son become this person? He shook his head slowly. I don't know, Margaret. Maybe we gave him too much. Maybe he never learned that actions have consequences because we were always there to fix everything. That night, while Peter slept in what had been his father's room, Michael and I made a pact. We would not allow our grandson to grow up with the same sense of entitlement that had corrupted David. We would teach him responsibility, hard work, and most importantly, integrity. The next morning I got a call from the prison. It was David. Hello? My voice was hesitant, unsure. Mom. David's voice sounded different over the prison phone. Harder, colder. I was silent, not knowing what to say to the son who had tried to use me as a drug mule. You destroyed our lives, he continued when he realized I wouldn't speak. Do you know what happens to people like me in jail? Do you know how long I can be in here for? I felt my knees give out and sat down in the nearest chair. It was surreal to hear my son, the boy I raised, blame me for suffering the consequences of his own actions. David, I finally managed to say, you put illicit substances in our bag without our knowledge. You and Rachel planned to use your own parents as drug couriers, and now you're blaming me for calling the police. It was our only chance, Mum. We owe money to dangerous people. They were going to hurt Peter after you refused to pay for his school. Don't you dare, I interrupted, my voice trembling with rage. Don't you dare use your son as an excuse. We helped you for 6 years. 6 years. We gave you money we didn't even have to support a lifestyle you couldn't afford. And when we finally said no to an expensive private school, you decided to turn us into criminals. There was a silence on the other end of the line. How is Peter? He finally asked, his voice suddenly smaller. He's with us. He's safe. He's in school. And for the first time in a long time, he's in a home where he doesn't have to listen to constant arguments about money. I want to talk to him. That's no longer up to me, David. There's a legal process now. The judge will determine when and how you can have contact. I heard a heavy sigh. Mum, please, you need to help us. You need to pay for a good lawyer. For the family, for Peter. No, I replied, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. It's over, David. The money is gone. The trust is gone. You crossed a line that can't be undone. You're going to regret this, he said, and I could hear the rage building up again. When I get out of here? If you're threatening your own parents now, David, I suggest you think carefully, I interrupted. Any threat will be reported to the authorities immediately. I'm going to take care of Peter and give him the stability he deserves. It's my only responsibility now. I hung up the phone with trembling hands. Michael, who had heard everything from the kitchen doorway, came over and hugged me in silence. We stood there, 2 elderly people leaning on each other, trying to process how our only son had become a menacing stranger. Weeks turned into months. Life with Peter brought a new and surprisingly comforting routine. He went to school in the morning. I made his lunch and helped him with his homework. In the afternoon, Michael would take him to play baseball at the neighborhood field or ride his bike. At night, we would sit down together for dinner, something that, as we discovered, rarely happened at his house. Peter told us he usually ate alone while watching television while his parents argued in another room. Grandma, Peter asked me one night while I was tucking him in, why did my parents fight so much about money if you were helping them? The question took me by surprise. Peter was much more perceptive than we had imagined. Well, honey, sometimes people want more than they can have. Your parents wanted a big house, new cars, vacations, an expensive school for you. But they didn't have enough money for all of that. Grandpa and I helped a lot, but it still wasn't enough for the lifestyle they wanted. Peter thought for a moment. At home, my mum always said it was your fault for not helping more, that if you really loved us, you'd give us more money. Each of Peter's revelations was like a small knife twist. It was painful to discover how David and Rachel had portrayed me to their own son, as a greedy villain, not as the grandmother who had sacrificed her own financial security for them. Peter, love is so much more than giving money. It's about being present. It's about teaching what's right. It's about setting boundaries when necessary. Sometimes, saying no is the hardest way to love someone. He nodded slowly. Like when you don't let me eat candy before dinner, because you care about my health. I smiled. Exactly. As the months passed, Peter flourished. His grades improved. He made friends in the neighborhood. And little by little, the questions about when his parents would be back became less frequent. Not from a lack of love, I realized, but because he was finally experiencing the stability every child deserves. The trial for David and Rachel was scheduled for 6 months after their arrest. As key witnesses, Michael and I would be called to testify. The idea of testifying against my own son made me physically sick, but I knew it was necessary, not just for justice, but to show Peter that even painful decisions are necessary when it comes to doing what is right. A week before the trial, I received a letter from Rachel. It surprised me. She had never written to me before. With some apprehension, I opened the envelope. "Dear mother-in-law," it began, "I hope this letter finds you well. I know you probably hate me now, and you have every right to. What we did was unforgivable, using you and Michael like that. I have no excuses. Prison gives you a lot of time to think. I've been thinking about all the times you helped us, and how I always wanted more, how I spoke badly about you to Peter, how I manipulated David to ask for more and more. The truth is, I never learned to live within our means. I always believed I deserved more than I had. And when you and Michael were there, ready to cover our debts, it was easy to keep going. I'm not asking for forgiveness or money for lawyers. I just wanted you to know that despite everything, I am grateful that you are taking care of my son. He deserves better than the parents he has. Rachel." I reread the letter several times, trying to find manipulation between the lines, but for the first time since I had known Rachel, her words seemed sincere. I showed the letter to Michael, who read it in silence. "What do you think?" I asked. He sighed deeply. "I think prison can change people. Some for the worse, some, maybe, for the better. Do you believe her?" "I don't know, Margaret, but I think it's the closest thing to an apology we're ever going to get." On the day of the trial, I wore my best dress, not out of vanity, but out of respect for the solemnity of the moment. Peter stayed with the neighbor. We decided he didn't need to go through the trauma of seeing his parents in court. The courtroom was surprisingly full. Apparently, the case of elderly parents being used as mules by their own children had attracted the attention of the local media. I sat next to Michael in the first row, my fingers intertwined with his, seeking strength. When David and Rachel walked in, handcuffed and wearing prison jumpsuits, my heart sank. David looked like he had aged 10 years in 6 months. He was thinner, with deep dark circles under his eyes, and a beard he had never had before. Our eyes met for a second, before he looked away, unable to face me. Rachel, on the other hand, looked directly at me and nodded slightly, as if acknowledging my presence. There was something different about her, a humility that had never existed before. The trial began with the charges being read. Drug trafficking, attempting to use third parties without consent for drug transport, association with drug trafficking. Every word was like a stab. When I was called to testify, my legs were trembling so much that I had to lean on the railing to get to the witness stand. The prosecutor asked me questions about the years of financial support, about the recent refusal of the private school tuition, about the strange reconciliation and the invitation for the trip. "Mrs. Margaret," the prosecutor asked, "when exactly did you realize something was wrong?" I swallowed, looking briefly at my son before answering. It was when David called during the trip to ask about the bag. He never in his entire adult life ended a call by saying he loved me. That wasn't normal. I felt like something was terribly wrong. "And what did you do then?" My voice failed. I asked my husband to stop the car. I opened the bag and found the packages hidden among my grandson's clothes. Packages of drugs. "And what was your reaction to discovering this?" My voice failed again. "I told my husband to call the police. I knew I was turning in my own son, but they were willing to let us go to prison in their place. What choice did I have?" The defense attorney, a young man in a cheap suit, stood up for cross-examination. "Mrs. Margaret, you state that you supported your son and his family for years. Are you aware that, by doing this, you may have created a financial dependency that led them to take desperate measures when you suddenly cut off that support?" I felt the blood rush to my face. I didn't suddenly cut off the support. I said no to one specific request, an expensive private school, after 6 years of paying for virtually all their expenses. And even if I had cut off everything at once, does that justify turning their own parents into unwitting drug traffickers? The lawyer backed away a bit at my indignation. "I am not suggesting a justification, ma'am. I am only establishing the context of the situation." "The context," I replied, my voice firmer now, "is that 2 adults in their 40s decided that the solution to their financial problems was to sacrifice their elderly parents." After my statement, it was Michael's turn. He told his version with the same dignified calm he always showed in moments of crisis. When he finished, the judge called David and Rachel to testify. David went to the witness stand first. He couldn't look at me as he spoke. "We were desperate," he began. "We owed money to dangerous people who threatened to hurt our son. When my mother refused to pay for the private school, we realized she had finally set a boundary, that we could no longer count on her financially." "And did that justify putting drugs in their bag without their knowledge?" the prosecutor asked. David finally looked at me, his eyes filled with tears. "No, nothing justifies what we did. I betrayed the people who were always by my side. I deserved to be arrested just for that." The sincerity in his voice surprised me. It didn't sound rehearsed or manipulative. Rachel testified next. She confirmed everything David had said, but she went further. "It was my idea," she admitted, leaving the court in silence. David hesitated, but I insisted. I said his parents were already old, that no one would suspect them, that it was our only way out. I manipulated my husband the same way I manipulated my in-laws for years. The trial lasted 3 days. On the last day, after the closing arguments, the judge announced her decision. "David and Rachel Miller, this court finds you guilty of all charges. However, considering the absence of a criminal record, the spontaneous confession, and the apparent remorse, I sentence both of you to 4 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after serving 1/3 of the sentence." 4 years. My son would spend 4 years in prison for something he himself had chosen to do. Peter would grow up during those years without his parents. And I, a 67-year-old grandmother, would be responsible for raising a preteen. After the trial, David's lawyer asked if we would like to speak with him briefly before he was taken back to prison. I looked at Michael, who nodded slightly. In a small room next to the courtroom, we found David, still handcuffed, but without guards in the room. "Mom," he began as soon as we walked in, his voice choked. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. What we did has no excuse." "Why, David?" I asked, the question that had tormented me for months. "Why would you do something like that to us after everything we did for you?" He lowered his head. "Because for years, you were always there to clean up my messes. Whenever I made a mistake, you fixed it. I guess I never really grew up. I never learned to deal with the consequences of my own mistakes." "And now?" Michael asked, his voice calm but firm. "Now?" David took a deep breath. "Now I want you to take care of Peter better than I ever did. I don't want him to grow up like me, believing the world owes him something." "His custody will still be decided by the judge," Michael said. "I know. And I'm going to recommend that he stay with you. Peter needs stability. Better examples than Rachel and I were." Those words, coming from my son, took me completely by surprise. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I saw a glimpse of the boy I had raised, a glimmer of integrity and responsibility. "I'm going to try to be a better person when I get out of here," he continued. "Someone that you and Peter can respect again." When the guard came to get David, I did something I hadn't planned. I hugged my son. It was a quick hug, still burdened with pain and distrust, but also with a small hope that maybe something good could come out of all this mess. On the way back home, Michael and I were silent for a long time. "Do you think he's really changed?" I finally asked. Michael thought for a moment. "I don't know. Prison changes people, but not always for the better. I think only time will tell." "And us? What happens now?" He took my hand on the car seat. "Now we raise our grandson. We give him what he needs, not necessarily what he wants. We teach him values, responsibility, integrity, and we pray we do a better job this time." When we got home, Peter ran to meet us, anxious for news. "What happened? When are Dad and Mum coming back?" We sat with him in the living room and explained as gently as possible that his parents would be away for a few years, that he would live with us during that time. "Are they really going to jail?" his little voice asked. "Yes, sweetie. They did something wrong, and now they need to face the consequences." Peter was silent for a moment, processing the information. "Can I visit them?" "That will depend on the family court judge, but probably yes, with some restrictions." He nodded, surprisingly composed for a boy his age. "Okay, I understand." That night, as I was making Peter's bed, he asked me a question that would stay with me for a long time. "Grandma, do you still love Dad even after what he did?" Peter's question caught me off guard. How do you explain the complexity of a mother's love to a 10-year-old? How do you say that it's possible to love a person deeply and at the same time be devastated by their choices? "Peter," I began, sitting on the edge of the bed, "a mother's love is complicated. I love your father, yes. I will love him forever because he is my son. But that doesn't mean I accept or approve of what he did. Loving someone isn't giving them a free pass to do bad things." Peter thought for a moment, clutching his worn teddy bear. "Like when you love me, but you ground me if I do something bad?" I smiled at the perfect simplicity of his analogy. "Exactly, sweetie. I love you too much to let you grow up believing you can do anything without consequences." "And will you love me even if I do something really, really bad one day, like Dad did?" I felt my heart clench at the fear in his voice. "Always, Peter. Always. Nothing in the world could ever change that." He nodded, seeming satisfied. "Then I think it's okay that Dad is in jail, as long as you still love him." The following weeks were dedicated to establishing a new normal. The social worker visited regularly to check how Peter was adjusting. The family court judge determined that for now, Michael and I would have provisional custody, with the first visit to the parents scheduled for 2 months after the start of their sentence. On the day of the visit, Peter was nervous, changing his clothes 3 times before settling on a superhero t-shirt that David had given him for his last birthday. "Do you think they'll be happy to see me?" he asked as I combed his unruly hair. "It will be the best thing that's happened to them in months," I replied honestly. The correctional facility was a cold and intimidating place, even for a visit. Peter squeezed my hand tightly as we passed through the metal detectors and security procedures. The visiting room had concrete tables bolted to the floor and hard plastic chairs. David came in first. He was wearing the orange prison uniform and looked even thinner than he had at the trial. His eyes lit up when he saw Peter, and for a moment I could see the boy he had been, before life and bad choices had transformed him. "Peter." He knelt and opened his arms. Peter hesitated for only a second before running to his father, wrapping him in a tight hug. I felt tears in my eyes seeing that reunion. No matter what mistakes David had made, he was, and always would be, Peter's father. Rachel came in right after. She was different. Her hair, once carefully dyed and styled, now showed grey roots. Her face, without the makeup I had never seen her without, looked older and more tired. But when she saw Peter, her smile was genuine. I sat at a nearby table, giving them some privacy while Peter excitedly talked about his new school, the friends he had made, the dog that Michael was considering adopting for him. "Grandma helps me with homework every day," I heard Peter say, "and Grandpa is teaching me to play chess. They said that when I'm good enough, we're going to go to a tournament." David looked at me over Peter's head, his eyes communicating a silent gratitude that words could not express. After almost an hour, a guard announced that the visit was ending. David hugged Peter for a long time. "Be good to your grandparents," he said. "Listen to what they say. They're wiser than I ever was." "When are you coming home, Dad?" Peter asked, the question I knew he had been holding in. David looked at me again before answering. "It's going to take a while, son. But when I come back, I'm going to be a better father. I promise." As Peter said goodbye to Rachel, David came over to me. "Mum," he said softly, "I know I don't deserve to ask for anything, but please, don't let him forget me. Don't let him think I don't care." "I would never do that, David. He will always know you love him." David nodded, swallowing hard. "Thank you. For everything. For taking care of him. For not letting him go to a group home or a foster family." "He's my grandson," I replied simply, "and you, with all your mistakes, are still my son." On the way back home, Peter was unusually quiet. "Are you okay, sweetie?" I asked, watching him in the rearview mirror. "They seemed different," he finally said. "Different how?" "Smaller. Dad always seemed so big, and Mum was always dressed up with makeup and her nails done. Now they just look like normal people." I understood what he meant. To a child, parents are almost mythical figures, larger than life, infallible. Seeing David and Rachel in prison, vulnerable and diminished, must have been a shock to Peter's view of them. "They're learning some hard lessons," I explained. "Sometimes we need to lose everything to realize what really matters." "What do you mean?" "Like family, like being honest, like taking responsibility for our mistakes instead of trying to make other people pay for them." Peter was silent for the rest of the ride, lost in thoughts I could only imagine. The months turned into a year. The bi-monthly visits to the prison became part of our routine. Peter adapted surprisingly well to his new life. His grades were excellent, he had friends, and he played baseball on Saturdays on a local team that Michael volunteered to coach. The social worker who visited us regularly commented on how much happier and more secure Peter seemed than when she first met him. "You're doing an amazing job," she said during one of her visits. "It's not common to see children adapt so well after a trauma like this." "He's strong," I replied. "Stronger than I was at his age." David and Rachel, meanwhile, seemed to be changing in prison. David got a job in the prison library and started studying to finish his degree through a distance education program. Rachel got involved in a crafts program and even started teaching sewing classes to other inmates. During visits, they always asked about Peter's school, his activities, his development. They seemed genuinely interested in his life, not just worried about when they could get it back. In one of the visits, about a year and a half after the arrest, David asked to speak to me alone for a few minutes. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot," he began, his tone more serious than usual. "When I get out of here, I don't want you and Dad to support us again." I raised my eyebrows, surprised by the statement. "I want to do things the right way this time," he continued. "I'm studying. I got a qualification in accounting. I'm going to find a job, live within our means. No more cars we can't afford. No more expensive private schools." "It's good to hear that, son. And I want you to promise me something," he said, leaning forward. "If I ever go back to my old habits, if I start asking for money or trying to manipulate you, say no immediately, no matter what excuse I give you." The sincerity in his eyes moved me. It was the first real sign that David was genuinely committed to changing. "I promise," I replied, "but I hope I won't need to keep that promise." He smiled, a sad but honest smile. "Me too, Mom. Me too." That night I told Michael about the conversation as we were doing the dinner dishes. Peter was already in bed, exhausted after a day at the water park. "Do you believe him?" Michael asked, drying a plate. "I want to believe him," I answered honestly, "but I know that real change takes time, and that good intentions in prison are different from facing temptations in the real world." Michael nodded. "You know what worries me the most? What will it be like for Peter when they get out? He's so well adjusted here with us. The transition is going to be difficult." It was a concern I had too. Peter, now almost 12, was flourishing under our care. The idea of interrupting that stability was distressing. "We'll take it one day at a time," I said, repeating the mantra that had sustained us through this turbulent period. One day at a time. Peter's 12th birthday arrived on a sunny Saturday in September. We prepared a small party in the backyard. Nothing extravagant, just a few school friends, a homemade cake he helped me make himself, and a table of simple treats. The difference from the elaborate parties David and Rachel used to throw was notable. "Are you sure you don't need any help with the party costs?" the social worker had asked during her monthly visit, clearly worried about our limited retirement budget. "We're fine," Michael replied with a smile. "We've discovered that children need more attention than expensive parties." It was true. Peter, who used to have themed parties at rented venues with expensive gifts and professional decorations, seemed happier with our simple homemade celebration than I had ever seen him at the previous parties, perhaps because he was now really involved in everything, from choosing the cake flavor to helping inflate the balloons. "This is the best birthday I've ever had, Grandma," he said to me while we were hanging streamers together. "Even without the bouncy castle and the cotton candy machine?" I asked, half joking, half serious. "Yeah," he shrugged. "It was fun, but I barely saw my parents during the parties. They were always busy greeting guests or arguing about something that wasn't exactly how my mum wanted it." The wisdom of that boy sometimes surprised me. At only 12 years old, Peter had already learned lessons about values and priorities that took his parents decades to begin to understand, and even then, They needed prison for it. Peter's big gift was a new bicycle. Not the latest model, but a good quality one that Michael had restored from a used bike we found at a second-hand store. Together, they had sanded, painted, and repaired that bike for weeks, turning the project into a grandpa and grandson activity that created more memories than any purchased gift could. In the middle of the party, while the kids were playing baseball in the backyard, my cell phone rang. It was the prison number. David had gotten special permission to call on his son's birthday. "Mum, is Peter nearby?" "Yes, David. Do you want to talk to him?" "Please." I called Peter, who came running, his face flushed and a smile from ear to ear. "It's your dad," I said, handing him the phone. Peter talked excitedly for a few minutes, describing the party, his friends, the bike that Grandpa had fixed for him. "Yeah, Dad, I'm really enjoying it," he said in response to something David asked. "Grandma and Grandpa said maybe we can go fishing on the next holiday at their neighbor's farm." When he finished the call, Peter handed me the phone back. "Dad wants to talk to you again." "Thank you, Mum," David said when I took the phone, "for giving him a normal happy birthday. I know it's not the party Rachel and I would have thrown, but it's exactly what he needs. Simple things, done with love." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I don't know how to thank you for everything you're doing. Keep studying, keep improving. It's the best thank you can give us." "Mum, there's something else. I filed for parole. The lawyers think I have a good chance, with my good behavior and the classes I've been taking here." I felt a knot in my chest. Parole meant David would be out of prison during the day, returning only to sleep. It was the first step towards his full release, which was scheduled for a little over a year from now, with reductions for good behavior. "That's good, son," I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. "I know it's complicated," he continued, clearly sensing my hesitation. "Peter is so well established with you now. I don't want to mess that up, but I want to start being a part of his life again, little by little." "Of course," I replied automatically, my mind spinning with the implications. "We'll talk about it at the next visit." After I hung up, Michael noticed my worried expression. "What's wrong, Margaret?" I told him about David's parole request. Michael was silent for a moment, thoughtful. "It was to be expected," he finally said. "We couldn't keep him away forever. He is the boy's father, after all." "I know. It's just, Peter is so good, so balanced. I'm afraid everything will fall apart when David starts to come back into his life." Michael took my hand. "We can't control that, dear. We can only do our best and be there for Peter, no matter what." 2 weeks later, we received the news. David's request had been approved. Starting the following month, he would be on parole, working during the day at a cooperative that employed former inmates and returning to prison only to sleep. We sat down with Peter to explain what that meant. "Your dad will be able to see you more often now," Michael explained. "You can spend a few hours together on weekends, maybe even go out for ice cream or go to the park." Peter's eyes lit up. "Will he be able to watch my baseball games?" "Probably, yes, if it's during the permitted hours." "And my mum?" "Your mum is still in prison," I explained. "You'll continue to visit her every 2 weeks, just like always." Peter nodded, absorbing the information. "And where will I live? Still with you guys, right?" The worry in his voice was evident. After almost 2 years of living with us, our house had become his safe harbor. "Yes, sweetie," I reassured him. "You'll still live here for now. When your dad is completely released, that's when the judge will decide the new arrangements. But that's still a little while away." "And what if I want to keep living here even after that?" The question hung in the air, heavy with its implications. Michael and I exchanged glances. "That's something we'll have to discuss with your dad when the time comes," Michael said carefully. But remember that your dad loves you very much and also wants what's best for you. Peter's first meeting with David outside of prison happened on a Saturday. David, still wearing an ankle monitor, looked uncomfortable in his civilian clothes, as if he had forgotten how to dress like a regular person. We agreed to meet at a park near our house. I stayed at a distance, giving them privacy but keeping them in my sight. I saw David hug Peter for a long time. I saw them talking as they walked through the park. I saw David enthusiastically clap when Peter showed him some moves with his baseball. It seemed so normal, as if those 2 years of separation had never happened, as if David hadn't tried to turn his own parents into drug traffickers. When the permitted time was over and David had to return to the cooperative, Peter came back to me with a smile I hadn't seen in a long time. "Dad said he's managing to save money at his new job," he said animatedly. "He said that when he gets out completely, he's going to rent a small apartment, but with a room just for me." I forced a smile. "That's great, Peter. He asked me if I want to live with him when he gets out." My heart sank. "And what did you tell him?" Peter looked at me, suddenly serious. "I said that I like living with Grandma and Grandpa, that I don't want to change schools or leave my friends." I felt a guilty relief. On one hand, I was happy that Peter felt so good with us that he didn't want to leave. On the other, I knew it would break David's heart. What did he say? He seemed sad, but then he said he understands, that maybe I can spend weekends with him, or vacations, that the important thing is that I'm happy and safe. Those words surprised me. The old David would have insisted, maybe even tried to make Peter feel guilty. This new David, who accepted his son's preference and prioritized his well-being above his own desires, was a significant change. That night, I received a text message from an unknown number. "Mum, it's David, from the cooperative. Thank you for bringing Peter today. I know it's not easy for you to see me coming back into your lives, but I promise I'll do everything differently this time. P.S. Peter is an amazing kid. You guys did a much better job than I ever did." I showed the message to Michael, who read it in silence. "What do you think?" I asked. Michael sighed deeply. "I think that maybe he's really changing." The following months established a new routine. Peter continued to live with us, going to school, participating in the baseball team. On Saturdays, he would spend a few hours with David, sometimes at the park, sometimes at a coffee shop, occasionally at school events that David could attend with special authorization. On Sundays, we alternated between days at home and visits to Rachel in prison. It was a delicate balance, but somehow it was working. Peter seemed happy with the arrangement, having the stability of our home and the gradual reconnection with his father. David, for his part, seemed to be taking his promise of change seriously. He worked consistently at the cooperative, continued his studies, and most importantly, never asked us for money. One Sunday morning, while Peter was still sleeping, Michael and I were drinking coffee on the porch, enjoying the morning coolness. "Have you thought about what's going to happen when David is completely released?" Michael asked, breaking our comfortable silence. The question had been hanging over us for months, but we always avoided addressing it directly. "I think about it every day," I confessed. "It's only 4 months away now." "And what do you think is going to happen?" I sighed deeply. "Honestly, I don't know. Peter made it clear that he wants to continue living with us, at least for now. But legally, David is the father. If he wants full custody..." "Do you think he would do that? Force Peter to go against his will?" I shook my head slowly. "The old David? Definitely. This new David? I'm not sure." Our reflections were interrupted by the phone ringing. It was Sunday morning. Who could be calling so early? "Hello," I answered, a slight premonition bothering me. Mrs. Margaret. It's a male voice I didn't immediately recognize. This is Mark, a supervisor at the cooperative where your son works. My heart raced. Did something happen with David? He asked me to call. There was an incident last night. He's at the county hospital. Hospital? I exclaimed, making Michael turn sharply towards me. What happened? Is he okay? He was attacked on his way back to the prison housing. Apparently, some old associates weren't happy with his refusal to go back to work with them after his release. Oh my God, I whispered. Is it serious? Some broken ribs, a deep cut on his arm, a concussion. But he's going to make it. He's asking to see you and Peter. The prison administration authorized the visit to the hospital. I hung up the phone and quickly explained the situation to Michael. We decided not to tell Peter all the details, just that his dad had gotten hurt and was in the hospital. The public hospital was crowded that Sunday. We followed the crowded hallway until we reached David's bed. The sight of him shocked me. His face was swollen and bruised, one of his eyes was completely shut, his arm was bandaged and in a sling. "Mom," he mumbled when he saw me, his voice hoarse. "You came." "Of course I came, son." Peter ran to the side of the bed, his eyes wide with worry. "Dad, what happened? Did you fall?" David tried to smile, but the bruise on his face turned the expression into a grimace. "Something like that, champ. But don't worry. Your dad is strong. I'll be all right soon." After Michael took Peter to get something from the cafeteria, David held my hand. "It was the people from my past," he said softly, "the ones I owed money to, the same ones who got us into that situation with the bag. They came after you after all this time." David nodded slightly. "They've been pressuring me for weeks. They wanted me to go back to work for them when I got out. Distribution, they call it. Drug trafficking is the real name." "And you refused?" "I refused," he confirmed, a slight pride in his voice despite the pain. "I said I was out of that life, that I had a son to raise, a clean future to build." I looked at my son, lying in that hospital bed, hurt for having made the right choice for the first time in so long. I felt a pride I hadn't felt in years. "They said they'll be back," David continued, his voice now a tense whisper, "that they'll come for me, and if necessary, for Peter." I felt my blood run cold. "For Peter?" "Mum," David squeezed my hand, his eyes intense despite his injuries. "I can't stay here. I can't put you or Peter at risk. When I'm released, I need to leave, go somewhere far away where they can't find me." "But what about Peter? Your plans to rent an apartment, to have a room for him?" "That's why I'm talking to you now," he replied, his voice choked. "Peter is happy and safe with you. He has his school, his friends, stability. Tearing him away from all that for a life on the run from drug traffickers." He shook his head. "What kind of father would I be?" "What are you saying, David?" "I'm saying that when I get out, I'm going to leave, alone. I'm going to another state, to start over where no one knows me. And I want you and Dad to keep custody of Peter." The statement took me completely by surprise. It was the opposite of what I had feared. Instead of fighting for custody, David was voluntarily giving up his son to keep him safe. "Are you sure about that? He's your son. And because he's my son, I need to do what's best for him, not what's easiest for me." He swallowed, visibly emotional. "It's what you did on that highway, Mum, when you found the drugs in the bag. You did what was necessary, not what was easy. Now it's my turn to do the same." When Michael and Peter returned, we talked about trivial things, the baseball team, school, the new video game Peter had asked for Christmas, but my mind was spinning from the previous conversation. 2 days later, David was discharged and returned to parole, now with additional protection. In the following weeks, he began to prepare Peter for the idea that he would need to move when he was released. "Because of work, son. I got a new opportunity in Los Angeles. It's a new opportunity, a new life." "But what about me?" Peter asked, his voice small. "Can't I go with you?" I saw David's heart break at that question, but he held firm. "Not right now, champ. You have school, friends, your whole life established here. It wouldn't be fair to tear you away from all that. But I'll visit whenever I can. And when I'm settled, who knows?" Both of us knew it was an empty promise, but it was easier than the brutal truth that David was leaving to protect his son from dangerous men who might use him to get to him. The day of David's release came on a rainy Tuesday in March. Michael and I picked him up at the prison gate while Peter was at school. It was a decision made to make the difficult goodbye easier. "So this is it," David said, standing on the sidewalk with a simple backpack containing all his belongings. "Starting over at 44? "You'll do great," Michael said, patting his shoulder. "You're still young, you're healthy, you're studying. A lot of people start over with less than that." David nodded. "I know. I just wish I had realized this sooner, before I lost so many years, before I almost sacrificed the two of you for my irresponsibility." We took David to our house for one last family meal before his departure. The bus ticket to Phoenix was bought for that night. A friend from the cooperative had arranged a job and a place for him to stay there. Peter came home from school and spent the last precious hours with his father. They played video games, talked about baseball, and made impossible plans about what they would do when they saw each other again. It was painful to watch, knowing that it could be months, maybe years, before it was safe for David to come back. When it was time to leave, David hugged Peter for a long time. "Be a good boy to your grandparents," he said, his voice choked. "Study, be honest, work hard, be better than your dad." "I will, Dad. I promise." Peter was openly crying now. "But come back soon, okay?" "As soon as I can, champ. As soon as I can." David turned to me, his eyes red. "Mum, I didn't let him finish. I hugged my son with all the strength I had. "I know, David, I know." After the cab took David to the bus station, I sat with Peter on the porch while he processed his father's departure. Michael had gone to get some ice cream, our tradition for difficult times. "Grandma," Peter said finally, "Dad isn't going to be back for a while, is he?" I looked at my grandson, now almost 13, more perceptive than we gave him credit for. "Maybe not, honey. He needs a fresh start, away from the bad influences of the past." Peter nodded slowly. "It's because of those men who hurt him, right? I heard you guys talking at the hospital when you thought I was sleeping." I took a deep breath, surprised. "Yes, Peter, your dad is leaving to keep you safe." Instead of getting angry at the truth, Peter seemed to accept it with a surprising maturity. "So he's protecting us, like a hero?" "Yes," I replied, feeling tears in my eyes. "Exactly like a hero." 3 months later, Rachel was also released on parole. Unlike David, she had no previous involvement with drug trafficking and was able to stay in the city. She started working at a textile factory and renting a small room. Peter visited her regularly, and she, contrary to everything I could have expected, always respected our role as his primary guardians. "I know Peter is better off with you guys," she told me one time while we waited for Peter to finish a baseball game. "You gave him the stability that David and I could never offer." A year passed. David called Peter regularly. He sent occasional gifts on special occasions, but he never returned for a visit. Through video calls, we saw that he seemed to be thriving. He had gained weight. His face had color again. His eyes shone with a serenity he had never had before. In one of those calls, he asked to speak with me alone. "How are you, son?" I asked when Peter left the room. "Good, Mum. Really good. A steady job, a small but decent apartment. I'm even dating someone." "That's wonderful, son. And is it safe now?" He sighed. "Not yet. Last week I found out they're still asking about me around here. It's better to stay away for now." I nodded, understanding the pain behind that ongoing decision. "Mum," he continued, "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For saying no that day, for stopping the car, for calling the police." He smiled sadly. "It sounds crazy to thank you for that, but if you had kept driving, if you had been caught with those drugs, not only would you have been arrested, but I never would have changed. I would have stayed in that life, making terrible decisions, until I ended up dead or in prison for something much worse." I felt tears run down my face. I just did what any mother would do to protect her family. "No, Mum, you did what a wise mother would do. A mother who knows that loving isn't giving everything, isn't always saying yes. Sometimes the deepest love is saying no. It's setting boundaries. It's letting the person face the consequences of their own mistakes." Those words stayed with me in the following years. As Peter grew up, as Michael and I grew older, as our family, broken and mended, found its new normal. Peter is 17 now. Next year he will go to college, the first person in our family to do so. David is still in Los Angeles. He built a new life. And although the distance remains, the bond with his son never completely broke. Rachel, surprisingly, became a constant and positive presence. Having learned to respect boundaries she seemed incapable of recognizing before. As for me, at 72, I look back at that afternoon on the highway, the moment I yelled at Michael to turn the car around, and I know it was the most difficult and most important decision of my life. It was the moment I realized that loving doesn't mean allowing everything, that setting boundaries isn't cruelty, and that sometimes saying no is the greatest gift we can give someone. When I opened that bag and saw what my son had hidden in there, my world fell apart. But from the ruins of that day, we built something new, an imperfect family with scars, but stronger and more honest than we had ever been before. As Peter recently said in a school paper about his family, sometimes we need to lose everything to discover what really matters. My father learned that the hard way, but thanks to my grandmother's bravery, we all learned it too. Now, if you liked this story, click on the next video that's appearing on the screen, because in it, there's a story of betrayal and rebellion like you've never seen before.